Good. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. How's everybody? Happy spring. And the weather is starting to act spring-like, so that's pretty great. So here we are for our last class. For those of you who may not have met me, my name's Kathleen Donahue, and this is the last of our 6 series classes on simple steps for starting your business from our Bucks County SCORE chapter. Today we're going to be focusing on financing. If you don't already have it, be sure that you get the workbook, which is at this website. It's also in the email, and also that you are able to access our Slack page, because that's where we get our exercises from. And also it's a place where we can communicate with each other. I will be keeping the Slack site up for a while so that you guys can continue to hobnob with your fellow wizards and with me. I really urge you to network with other business owners. I know sometimes it feels awkward, like, oh, nobody really wants to, hear about my stuff or, things like that. But it's really important to keep talking to people, particularly while we're still in to be in touch with other people who are doing the same things, get other ideas. And as a business owner, networking is always going to be an incredibly valuable skill. So practice it, use every medium you can find, and keep going with that, because that's where you're going to find business. It's where you're going to find information. If you try and do everything all by yourself, it's it's going to be that much harder for you. Okay, so here we are up to the last section. Today we're going to focus on funding. So we're going to talk about how can we go about getting some money for our business. So last time we were looking at financial tools, and we took a very brief overview of tools for creating your financial documents. So
I want to like a.
Somebody's got their mic open. Can you mind muting, please?
Yes.
Thanks. Unless you're asking me a question. You're welcome to ask me a question, but I thought you were dealing with someone else in the room. Question? No? Okay. So last time we were talking about financial documents. And so the main financial documents that we're working with are helping us to figure out how much money do we need to start this business? How much money can we potentially make from this business? How much cash do we have on hand to pay our bills? And these are not one-time documents. These are not static. Now, we can do static reports, say, a year-end financial statement to say how much profit have we made overall, how much equity have we created in the business. But most of the documents are going to be ongoing decision support tools that you're going to use every month, perhaps even every week or every day, to help you make better decisions about your business. Remember, the purpose of business is to make money. Even if it's a nonprofit, it still needs to provide, its service, and it needs to have enough income to continue to do that. So no matter what kind of business you have, we can't, kind of live in a lofty world where, we're above money. Money is going to be really important. And so we need to know how to do all of that. So who here took a stab at working on those financial documents that we looked at last week? Anybody? If not, why not? What was hard about it? Were they intimidating? Or, yeah, I can't see everybody all at one time, but I see a couple of nods. Yeah. What was intimidating about them?
This, I think just the reality of what, sort of like just setting it down concretely, what you have in hand, what projections, like what you need to think about, what do you need to earn, and how do you need to earn it. Right. And I know it sounds very basic, but I do think I definitely felt daunted about it,
Okay.
the reality.
Yeah. And, it's really no different than managing your own home budget and figuring out, how are you going to plan to pay your bills and, set yourself up for retirement someday or have money for emergencies. It's just that in this case, we're going to be using this money for the business so that the business will make us money. Good. Anybody else? All right. So this is one of the reasons why it's really great to have a mentor. Okay, because a mentor can help you walk through these processes. I promise you the math is not the hard part because it's basically addition and subtraction. And very, very occasionally we're going to do, a percentage. Woohoo. And the tool, whatever tool you're using, is going to do all of that for you. So hopefully you're going to be using some accounting software. But if you're not and you're using a spreadsheet, spreadsheets add, subtract, and do percentages as well. Okay. Nobody's asking you to do this with a pencil anymore. You all have a calculator on your phone. Good. All right. So anybody else get a SCORE mentor in the last 2 weeks since the last time we met? Yes?
Yep.
I hear somebody, but it's breaking up a little bit.
Yes, I did.
Oh, great. Good. So have you had a meeting?
We did. We've had one meeting so far. Mhm.
All right. Well, keep going. And, you can meet once a week, every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, whatever makes sense, for your schedule and your mentor's schedule. But, first of all, you're going to have more information, but secondly, you'll also have sort of that little bit of social pressure to get stuff done that you might want to drag your feet on, where all of a sudden, it seems really, really important to clean out the closets or, weed the garden or, all the other things that we do to deflect things that kind of, intimidate us a little bit. But once we have a social obligation, once we've sort of committed to another person that we're going to do something, then that helps us to do this. I have one client who texts me every day and tells me her intentions, just so that she's setting up this intentionality, this social commitment to make sure that she gets done what she needs to get done in any given day. Just like I used to do with, when I worked out in the gym and had a gym partner to make sure I showed up. That was back before we had cell phones and it was easy to cancel things like that. All right. So today what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how to use these financial statements to do a little bit of analysis. I'm not going to get deeply into this. We're also going to talk a little bit about bookkeeping systems, what your alternatives are for how you can do your accounting. We're going to talk about ways to get capital. We're going to talk a little bit about credit. So if you are going to borrow money, what's involved with that and bank relationships. And then finally, we're going to talk about making the actual decision to go forward with a business or not. And we'll just do a little bit of review. Okay. So the rule of thumb is that once a month you're going to do your, you're going to do your bookkeeping. This is, if you're doing a payroll, you're going to have to do it more often because you have to do it every time you're going to be paying people. But what you want to be able to do is not let it get so overwhelming that it takes, a massive amount of time to do this. And so you can start to understand, first of all, do I have enough money to pay my bills? And second of all, what are the kinds of adjustments that I need to make my business profitable and effective? Am I getting the returns that I need in order to stay on track? Or if I'm not, what do I need to change to help affect that? Okay. Now, the way you're going to do this is going to involve having some way of keeping all of these things straight. Now, you saw that we tried doing these on spreadsheets, and frankly, it's good to learn using a spreadsheet, but in an ongoing basis, that's too cumbersome. All right. You got to keep programming and fixing the different cells and stuff like that. even if you love making macros in Excel, I highly recommend that you don't try to keep your books in Excel or Numbers or whatever your favorite spreadsheet software is uh, for a very long period of time. I do recommend that if you can, that you get some accounting software. The most popular one is QuickBooks, but there are a bunch of alternatives to QuickBooks. There are some that you can start out even using for free in a very small sample version, like Wave. There's a few others that are also available. Just do any Google search on alternatives to QuickBooks and you'll see lists of them. I did another one this morning and came up with a new site that I hadn't seen before that listed 10 alternatives to QuickBooks and their prices and pros and cons. And some of them were ones I hadn't even seen before. QuickBooks is the most popular. It's been around for a really long time. And it's pretty accessible. These days, everybody's moving into software as a service. So these become subscription fees. So they can be as low as maybe $12 to $15 a month. They get more expensive if you're using bigger versions of the software, payroll tracking, other kinds of things like that. And they even have some services that they can add on that you can pay for, like paying them to do your payroll if you want to. Now, a lot of people will prefer to say, well, I'd really rather hire an accountant or a bookkeeper. If you're still in a really small business mode, I would recommend that you start with a bookkeeper and rather than an accountant, because it's going to be a lot less expensive. But it is either way, whether you're using an accountant or a bookkeeper, you still need to have a really deep understanding of what these numbers are trying to tell you, because they are there to help you make better decisions, and nobody else can make those decisions for you. And so the closer you are to your numbers, the easier it is to see the cause versus the effect of the various choices that you make as you're running your business. Questions about that? Does that make sense? So you want to get close to your numbers, and it's going to feel very frustrating at first until you really kind of get over the learning hump. There's always a, kind of a hump where you go from being, a novice or a learner into having some mastery. Take a class. There's a lot of classes about QuickBooks. There's videos on YouTube and things like that, but there's also classes, and particularly when we emerge back into the real world, the community college has classes. Some of the community schools like the Soulberry, or depending on where you live, they have those community schools that they run at the high school. A lot of times somebody there will offer classes on how to use QuickBooks, and so you can get someone to sort of walk through it with you until you understand what those tools are trying to do. But they will generate all of these reports, so you don't have to reinvent those wheels. If you are going to use an accountant, you're still going to have a lot of other paperwork you need to do yourself. Just dumping all of your receipts on your accountant and walking away is not going to work. First of all, it's going to get really expensive because you're going to be using a lot more of their time. But secondly, you're not going to have that familiarity with this information to really understand what is all of this stuff trying to tell you. Okay? How do we synthesize it into a picture rather than just a big pile of stuff that looks like it should go in the recycling? So you also want to, make sure that you've got this record keeping for your taxes. And if you're going to apply for financing, then this is going to be really important, because you're going to have to paint a financial picture of how much money you have, how much money you stand to make, and how you're going to manage your income and outflows throughout the life of your business. That's going to convince somebody that they should be lending you some money or investing in your business. So different ways that we can get money. The first one, of course, is using your own money. And the rule of thumb is that you should be putting about 25 to 30% of the overall money that you need for your business in from your own sources. So if you have absolutely no savings, this can be really challenging. This is where sometimes we go to friends and family, or we may use a home equity loan, or refinance our mortgage, or if we have to, we may even go to using a revolving line of credit or a credit card. The other alternative is, of course, to find a partner who is somebody who has more investment experience. Sometimes people look for partners where, what they'll call a silent partner, where that partner is putting up the money and reaping part of the profits, but you're putting in the equity of doing all the work. Okay. Occasionally, there's opportunities for places to get grants, or if you are creating a big enough business to have equity investors in your business. But that's not generally where we're at when we're first starting our very first cut of a business. Okay. So, what are some of the pros and cons that you guys have considered for financing your businesses? Yeah, Christine.
So Kathleen, I was just actually looking for an answer for you. So I actually do use the Wave app that you mentioned. My husband uses QuickBooks for our household expenses and stuff, but I liked the Waves app because it integrates with your banking. So you connect so it goes right into my business account. And what I'm working on right now, a little further beyond, is I also use a Calendly app that if you use the pro version, I think it is, you can incorporate Wave into it so that when people are booking an appointment with you, they can pay right into it.
Great. Yeah. So there's a lot of great features that, then different versions of these things serve different kinds of businesses. So for example, if you're in a service business, then finding ways to get paid, especially these days, everybody wants to do stuff online and using credit cards. Writing checks is becoming a thing of the past. Those are important features for you to consider. So you also want to consider how does money come into me as well as how does money go out. And of course, you do want to be able to get connections, and pretty much any software that you use, you can download the transactions from your credit card companies, from your banks, from your investment houses, from lenders, and integrate those things so that you don't have to manually type every transaction into your software. They also help you generate invoices or estimates. You can track your customers that way. Total up, what are all your outstanding debts and or outstanding receivables, and be able to track those things, and also do things like track your business expenses, so that you have those things categorized appropriately for your tax return. Yeah.
That's good to know. Thanks.
And for my business, since my business was a one-person business, I used Quicken Home and Business, so that I could see both my business accounts and my personal accounts. And I'm kind of anal about tracking all of that stuff anyway. So that was a good version for me. If you're going to be using a payroll, you're going to be involving other people. Obviously, you want to use a separate QuickBooks or other kinds of app, because you don't want people in your personal finances as well. Good. Anybody else have a good process that they use? Or are you using an accountant, and how is that, or a bookkeeper, and how is that working for you? Nobody's using an accountant for their company?
No, I'm still in the beginning stages.
All right. Yeah. I mean, you're probably going to at least want somebody's going to help you with your taxes unless you're particularly good at that. These tools do integrate with things like TurboTax and so on. If you're using
Okay.
Quicken or QuickBooks, they are the same company as, say, TurboTax, so they integrate, but they all talk to each other anyway. So you won't have any, you won't have any problems if you want to change, use different vendors of software in combination with each other.
Okay.
Now, other than banks, there are some other opportunities for ways of getting some capital. The Small Business Administration guarantees some loans to businesses. Now, they don't sell the loans directly, so you don't call the SBA and apply directly to them. You have to go to a bank and meet with a lender who organizes small business administration loans on behalf of the Small Business Administration. In other words, your loan is through the bank, but the SBA is backing it. Depending on the nature of your business, there may be other sources of additional capital. For instance, if you're doing something that is directly related to your community, sometimes local communities have programs to offer some lending programs, or if you're working with an agricultural kind of business or those kinds of things. Now, another alternative, particularly if you're dealing with something that is considered pretty innovative, is to look for an angel or a venture capitalist. So these are people who have money, and simply investing in the stock market isn't as interesting to them, and so they're looking for opportunities, ways of investing in other businesses. Now, a lot of times, you've probably heard about venture capital organizations. Most of the times, those are people who are going to be helping, like tech startups or those kinds of businesses. They will also usually act as partners in terms of giving you advice and so on. In other words, they're not going to just throw money at you and disappear. They want to make sure that you're doing things that are going to be, effective for the money. And in most cases, unless you're borrowing money from your parents, and even then, sometimes then, if people have given you their money, they're going to want to know how you're using it and make sure that you're doing something effectively. Now, recently, organizations have started also figuring out ways to do this on a micro level called crowdfunding. Anybody here familiar with the concept of crowdfunding? So what crowdfunding is these are organizations that enable people with not millions of dollars that they want to invest, but to invest small amounts of money and to spread it out over a number of investors. So one of the biggest ones that's out there is Kiva. Has anybody here ever heard of Kiva? Now, what Kiva does mostly provides microloans to people outside the U.S. If you become interested in Kiva, you go online and you can sort for who are the people that are looking for loans. For instance, I do a lot of Kiva loans for women in developing countries. So whenever I have money that I want to put in there, I go on and I sort for women, and I may pick certain areas or countries and say, and there'll be a list of them, and I'll decide which ones I want to do. And then each one is done in increments of $25. Now, usually these people are trying to raise, about $5,000, but it's done by all of these people who each put in $25. And then as those loans are paid back, they're redeposited into your account, and then you can reloan it out. If somebody goes, their business goes under, then you lose that $25. So that, or whatever portion did not get repaid. The repayments come in, $1 or less per month. There's Kiva does also offer loans or list people from the United States. So you can apply to be on the borrowing side from Kiva, and they have people to help you figure out how to structure your proposal. And so, in other words, people who are interested in helping other people and for making some investments go online and they say, hey, that looks like a really useful service. I'd really like to help those people, and so they can put money in that way. So there's kind of four major categories of crowdsourcing companies. There's the microfinances, which are these, people who are trying to help people with very limited access to banking. So Kiva, for example, does microfinance kind of work. There's credit-based lending, which is from a traditional loan where you're trying to pay that down. There's the rewards-based crowdfunding, where there could be a variety of different kinds of businesses that people are trying to do, but different organizations that organize these may have different themes involved. So they only involve some certain types of business, maybe something related to a cause that they support or something like that. And again, they may also have some other extra things that they add in for that. Or there can be equity crowdfunding, which can involve some small ownership in the organization. So here are some examples of some of the kind of organizations that are available to this. The link on the bottom I added in, which has a list of, this is the 2021 list of organizations that are doing the different types of crowdfunding platforms. I also put this link in our Slack page under the funding hashtag. Okay. So you've probably heard of Kickstarter, for example. So Kickstarter is a rewards-based crowdfunding. They are looking for people with an innovative idea. And so they, again, you've got a whole lot of different people that are investing small amounts of money into that. And then they assemble that money and set up either a loan, or in some cases, it ends up being almost like a gift. You also have similar kinds of groups, Indiegogo, Fundable, and a whole bunch of other ones like this. In addition to these, there are also just basic GoFundMes, though GoFundMes are more donation oriented. So there are also organizations, if the organization that you're trying to set up is a nonprofit, there's a whole nother set of organizations that help to find funding for nonprofit organizations to collect donations and do all of that stuff. Because organizing a nonprofit is a big amount of work. You have to have a board, and everybody in the board has to be contributing financially as well as doing work for that. And in order to get those tax break notations, you have to file specifically for that to say, yes, we're really doing something that is considered nonprofit by the IRS. And so you can tell people that they can do certain deductions. Of course, the laws about charitable deductions keep changing in the tax code. That is definitely something that you want to talk to an accountant about if you're organizing one of those. Questions about any of this? Has anybody looked into any of the crowdsourcing alternatives? Okay. Well, if you don't have relatives with, bags of money who love you and want to hand out funds to you, these can be useful alternatives for that. Now, all of these things are going to force you to do all of this paperwork and get all of this stuff organized, because in order to make any of these applications, you need to tell a great story with your documents, and you're going to need both halves. So you need the the narrative half that you're going to do in your word processor that we worked on for the first 3 weeks of our class, 4 weeks actually, the first 4 sessions. And then you're going to need all of those financial pieces that we need to do, preferably in software, but minimally in a spreadsheet so that you can see all the columns of numbers. Okay. If you're looking for other sources of where else might there be capital, the Small Business Administration also provides other places to help you find this kind of money. I mean, their job is to help small businesses get started in the United States. That's one of the reasons that they have us as a resource partner, and they, set us up in SCORE to be successful. Depending on the nature of your business, particularly if you are a minority-owned business or a woman-owned business, you may also be entitled to grants. So please do check on those things. And it makes a lot of sense if you are qualified to get yourself registered through the SBA as a woman-owned business or as a minority-owned business, especially if you want to do business with the government, but not only for that. If you have any kind of business-to-business relationships, there are going to be people who are going to be looking for that, and they say, "Oh, I definitely want to support women-owned businesses, or I want to support minority-owned businesses. That's really important to me." And those are going to be there, and they actually actively look for those kinds of organizations. Okay. We do have people inside the chapter who specialize in some of this stuff. We have a few retired bankers who were people who organized small business loans for the SBA guaranteed loans, and they keep up on all of this kind of grant information. So remember that we mentors work together with each other and call upon each other for these kinds of specialized helps. So you can look them up in their profiles right on our page, and you don't have to pick somebody from Bucks County, but we also have we'll help you find those people if you need that help. So if you are going to go to the bank to get a loan, you're going to have to fill out a loan application. If you've ever had a mortgage or, any other kind of loan, a car loan or what have you, you've seen the idea before. This is going to be a bigger form, of course, but it's basically the same kind of idea. So what we're going to be looking for or what the bank is going to be looking for, first of all, is going to be a credit rating. And secondly, and possibly even or even more importantly, is evidence that you are going to be an effective manager of your business. Okay, bankers are really good at spotting, people who are together and able to run a business, because there's a lot of detail management in doing that. And so, being able to write a good business plan is evidence that you know what you're doing in terms of running a business. Obviously, they're going to be looking for a plan that has, is going to be a feasible plan. In other words, you're going to make enough money to be making your loan payments, and that you have enough skin in the game yourself to be a good investment. And think about who you would loan money to. So the same kinds of ideas. What are the things that you would be considering? Okay. So they talk about the 6 C's of credit: character, capacity, collateral, capital, conditions, and cash flow, which of course I'm going to go through with you. So the first one is going to be character, and that is trustworthiness. Okay. There's an expression that business occurs at the speed of trust. So in other words, if I can't trust, another person, then you're not going to do business with them. And you feel the same way. I mean, if you need your sink fixed and you call a plumber and he doesn't seem trustworthy, you're going to say, yeah, I'm not giving you money to fix my sink. I'm going to go get somebody else, because otherwise I'm going to end up with you got paid and I still have a leaky sink. So trustworthiness is really important. Having, and now you don't know if people don't know you or you don't know them, how are we going to know this? Well, one of those things, of course, is going to be things like references. People who can vouch for you. You can speak to your experience in business. You may be speaking to your experience as an employee before you started your business. That's perfectly okay. And what kind of impression are you actually making on the lender? Questions about this? Pretty obvious, right? Just like getting a job, the same kinds of characterizations. The next one is capacity, right? So in other words, what is your earning potential for your business? Are you going to be making enough money that you're going to be able to keep up with the payments? Are you, you're going to, are you going to be able to pay your rent as well and keep yourself, fed and clothed, as well as paying off your debts for this business? One of the things they're going to be looking for is how long is it going to take for you to get past that break-even point, right? So one of the documents we talked about last week was a break-even point. So what does it look like when you have, in terms of time that it takes, and is that cash that you have on hand or that you have, coming in, going to be sustainable until you make that break-even point? And then, will that business be sustainable after that? In other words, is this a business that is going to be an ongoing concern, which means it's going to continue to grow, it's going to continue to be something that people are going to be interested in, right? So if your business is to, come up with the next pet rock, pet rocks, for those of you who are old enough to remember them, were really, really popular. But it was a flash in the pan because everybody was like, okay, now we all have a rock that we named as a pet and we're done with this. How much money are you putting in as well is also going to be important to the banker. Just like when you buy a house, you have to, have a certain amount of your own equity in the house. The bank wants to see that you have enough invested in there, that they see that you're going to, you're just not going to say, oh, well, this isn't working, never mind. I'll default on the loan and move on to something else. They want some skin in the game. Okay. And they also want to see that you have the ability to save money, to accumulate wealth, and manage money effectively. Now, some loans are going to be collateralized, just like a mortgage is a collateralized loan. The house itself is the collateral for a mortgage. You can have what's called chattel loans, which are usually a vehicle, so something else that's movable that is the collateral. In other words, if you default on the loan, they could take back something of value from you and sell it. Never their first choice, never what they want to do. This, they always end up losing money. If they take your house, they're not going to end up richer than they were before, because there's going to be a lot of expense in maintaining that and selling it and doing all of that other things. You may have other kinds of tangible assets that are available that you can be using for collateral. It could be money that's equity in some other business that you're already involved with. You could have a third party who's guaranteeing this loan for you. Again, this is traditionally the role of parents, but not always. There may also be other things that you own that have great value that the bank will consider a strong enough stake to consider you a worthwhile risk. The next will be the conditions of the loan. So what are the terms? How long is it going to take for, how long a period of time are you intending to borrow this money? What is the current situation going on with the economy? Where are interest rates, and how much cash is flowing through the economy effectively at any given time? And so what is the economic climate of the community that you're living in, that the industry that you're working in? All of this stuff is very time-based. So, right now we're sort of in a weirdly unprecedented time. There's a lot of cash going, almost too much cash in the economy on the one hand, but not in all the places where we need it on the other. And we've had these weird, wild cards like the virus that are making these kinds of decisions harder to predict. But these people build models so that they can figure out what is the right mix for this to be successful. And then the last piece of this is cash flow, right? So how fast is the money coming into your business, and how fast is the money needing to flow out so that they can make sure that they're keeping up appropriately. Some businesses, this is their entire focus, right? So for instance, the construction industry. In the construction industry, you are just, let's say you're building a new shopping center. You are just pouring out money until it's finished. There's no income coming in from that property until you have completely finished it, gotten tenants in there, started to collect rents, and so on. So there can be a long period of time where money is just flowing out, flowing out, flowing out, flowing out. And so are you going to be able to manage that effectively? There are other businesses where money comes in very immediately, like in retail, right? So, in retail, you have a transaction, you get paid for it on the spot. But a lot of other businesses, you have to, you send them bills and you have to wait for them to pay you. And so what are those terms and how fast is that money coming? Now, once you have a payroll involved, then that also creates some complexity in your cash flow, because you may be waiting, for example, for, let's say you're setting up a home health care business and you have money coming in from insurance companies. You have to wait for those payments to reach you. But meanwhile, you still have to pay your payroll for the people who've been performing the services. And so how much is that cash cushion, or what other devices do you have set up to make sure that you're not going into overdraft? In other words, that your bills are all getting paid in a timely fashion. And then also there is, credit reports. Each credit reporter has their own model for how they do this. It's useful to know what your credit scores are going to be if you are looking for money. They do use a fairly common scoring benchmark, which is a numeral system. They're going to be generally looking for a score of at least 700 before you're going to be considered for a loan. So if you are not familiar, if you're planning on doing that and you are not familiar with your credit reports, then please do find that out. I think I saw in the paper recently that most of the credit reporters are doing another year. Last year, they were giving out free credit reports on a regular basis. You can get a certain number of credit reports for free in any time, but they are continuing to provide that information to people for free so that you can look at a couple of different sources of credit reporting, because you don't know which one the bank is going to be using. So this is a kind of a package that you're going to put together if you are going for a bank for a loan. You're going to have a cover letter that just summarizes who you are and why you want to borrow this money, and gives some an overview of your business. You want to have some financial statements if you've been trying to run your business and you're trying to get expand, for example, then you're going to need to have the last 3 years of financial statements and tax returns. You also want to have that cash flow, right? So how much money do you project is going to come in and go out in each month, so that they can see where, how much money you should have left in your in your account when you paid your bills for each of those periods. You also are going to need to give your personal financial information, especially for a small business, because they need to understand, like if you're already overburdened with debt or other problems, that creates more risk for your business loan. Questions about any of this? By the way, if you didn't see it already, we've had some really great webinars on some of these topics recently. So Al Cassidy, who I don't think is here today, but he has been here for this class a couple of times, did a really super webinar a couple of weeks ago about the cost basics essentials. So he covered in even more depth a few of the instruments that we looked at last week. And I often find it really helpful to learn material by hearing a bunch of people talk about it, because different metaphors or what have you will make more sense to you, and they all start to meld together. But we also have people who've been talking about what the SBA has been doing, and other SCORE groups have as well. So there's just been one of the things about having the pandemic is, since we can't do these things in person, everybody's been doing them in webinars, and the webinars get recorded. So we have built up this enormous library of this kind of information in this past year, particularly the last 6 months. Once we sort of got our acts together and figured out this is going away, we have to figure out how to do all this stuff online. So I really urge you to take a look at those. The nice thing is you can do them in your own time. You can look at these webinars. You don't have to worry about what time it was recorded. You can get on and look at them whenever you've got a free 45 minutes. All right, questions, comments, emotional outbursts. There's a great deal of emotionality in this, so it's not comfortable having people look at your financial life. It's not comfortable having people, scrutinize your business and telling you whether or not they think this is viable. And of course, having people say no can feel like it stings. Don't give up, right? Different organizations have different criteria and so on. So if you do apply for a loan and you get turned down, apply someplace else. If you're really not sure, again, get a SCORE mentor, figure out what else you need to do to shore up your presentation, your business plan, and then you can approach it again from another in another organization. Okay. Oh yes, and they are, these are more questions that they're going to ask. I got off on a tangent and lost track of my slide here. But if you've had any sort of liens placed on you, or you have overdue taxes or other things like that, they're going to want to know about that. Also, you may have other assets like life insurance or other forms of household income, right? So if you have another family member who's paying the rent and the grocery bill, then that's going to be favorable for you. So you're also going to want to have an understanding of where all of these other assets are going to be related directly to your business, as well as expenses. How much inventory you're going to be carrying, that is an asset. What kind of equipment are you purchasing, which of course could be sold, so that's assets. But also, do you have any debt associated with any of that, and any other contracts or commitments that you've made with other people? So who here is familiar with the term SWOT? We're not talking about flies here. Okay. So this is a very simple model that's used for business strategy called strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are internal. Opportunities and threats are outside of your control. So that's whatever's going on in the environment at the moment. And so what you want to be able to argue is to understand what are your particular strengths and how will they counter your weaknesses. Just knowing your strengths and weaknesses is not a strategy. It's only a strategy when you figure out how you're going to leverage your strengths to overcome your weaknesses. How are you going to use these strengths to exploit opportunities and to mitigate any threats, which are those things that are in the outside world. Okay. And this is another thing, it's like having, where we have an elevator speech for our potential clients or customers to say, here's what, my business is all about. I also want to be able to take that same value. What is it that I'm passionate about? What's the problem in the world that I want to solve and get other people excited about that? And that is part of your strengths. How am I going to use that to convince people that this is going to be a great ongoing business and that they want to get behind me and help make me successful? All right. So that was a lot more talking than I really like to do, but there's less good exercises for us in this particular this unit of business. So, but I do want to take a moment and just again turn the floor over to you. Questions, comments, concerns. Is anybody here going to be looking for a bank loan in the next few months to help start your business?
Kathleen, once I get, I'm working, so I'm in the beginning phase and I'm working on my LLC.
Mm-hmm.
So once I do get all that information and get my bank account, yes, I will be applying for a bank loan.
Right. Unless you're in a pure service business, a person, a party of one, and have enough capital to sustain you while you're doing that, getting yourself started, you're going to need money. Right. So unless you, maybe unless you have a really big bank account someplace that you say, you know what, I've been saving up so that I can invest in my business. And even then, I have clients who've been saving for a long time, but they know that they're going to need, more money once they get started to keep that cash flow going. And so they're, using that to say, okay, now I'm going to apply for my revolving line of credit or for, a small business loan to get that ball rolling. And for some people, depending on the nature of your business, this can take some time. If you're going to have anything that involves inventory, you're going to need money to buy. You can't sell what you don't have. So you're going to need money to do that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, so is it good so for my business, I would not need a lot of money, but would it be better for me to get a loan or a business line of credit?
Yeah, it would really depend specifically on your particular business and when you're going to need that cash up front. So for example, if you need a lot of cash up front for, to buy equipment, for example.
So I would need equipment.
Set up your kitchen.
Yeah.
It might be less expensive to take a loan because loans are pretty cheap right now.
Okay.
But if you don't know when you're going to need the money, but you're probably going to need it. So for example, if you start doing lots of huge catering jobs and you have to do a lot of pre-work and you have to buy a lot of, hire a lot of people to do that and you want to make payroll, then a revolving line of credit might work. And sometimes you need a little of each. So again, talk to one of our banking mentors, because we can help you if you know. But once you've got these plans laid out, then you start to see
What I need.
scenarios of when I need this money and how much do I need, and when am I going to get enough money to pay it back to make sense.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So just kind of rolling all the stuff that we've done over the last 6 sessions together. We started up with a business concept. And what we're talking about here is, why are we doing this? What is that burning passion that you have? What is that problem of the world that you're trying to solve for the world? And the clearer and more concise you can make that target, the easier that's going to help you make your future decisions, and the easier it's going to be to explain to other people what it is that you're trying to do. And then from that, you elaborate. So you get more, you get more detail. But it all needs to tie back to that main thing. What is the driving value that you're adding by creating your business? And I urge you to do this for yourself as well as for other people. I mean, it will be important to your marketing later on. It will be important to your investors. It will be important to just, having something to say when you're networking with people. But it will also help you to make better decisions, because things are going to come up and they're going to look really like, oh, that's really interesting. Should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? And if you have that target to compare it to, you can say, does this get me closer to my target or doesn't it? And if it doesn't, let it go. Sacrifice is giving up something good for something better. You need to know what the better is. And you need to have clear criteria for yourself. It takes some discipline. But if you can do this and you can make these decisions effectively, then you have a much better chance of being successful. I'm not saying you're never going to take some audacious chances with stuff, but you want to take them on things that you know are driving you in the right direction, not rabbit holes that are taking you off your course. And you may come to discover after you've done this for a while that, you know what, this isn't really what I thought it was. I really want to do this other thing that's tangentially different, or sometimes radically different. But now you know what that change is. And you're like, no, I need to change from here. I need to turn, 40 degrees to the west. That's perfectly okay. But you want to be clear about it. You're also going to start thinking about your market. If you're going to have a business, you have to have a market. Somebody has to be giving you this money for something of value. So who are these people and why would they want to do business with you? Why would they want to pay you for your services or your products? So we focused on our marketing plan so that we can figure out things like, how do we do pricing? How do we deal with competition? Remember that competition is not always just directly, the people who are doing the exact same thing you're doing. Competition is constantly evolving and changing. Okay? So that people who do something that seemed very tangential or unimportant end up being people who are invading your business space. There's stories about this all the time, in the paper on, of businesses on much larger scales, but you want to see this as well yourself. So, if you're, if you're interested in selling, coffee, and all of a sudden everybody is more interested in energy drinks, then you have a different kind of competitor. You also want to be looking at your distribution channels, and what are your ways of getting the word out there. These days we use a lot of technology, but sometimes the old-fashioned newspaper is the right way to go for you, or signage outside your shop, or those kinds of things. We also talked about the business model canvas, which gives you another way of laying this stuff all out and figuring out how to look at last time information and tell the entire story about money. How will money come in? How will money flow over periods of time? Right? So the incomes versus outcomes, and for some businesses, it's very seasonal, where there are some seasons where you're spending a lot more money and other seasons where you're taking in a lot of money. Is there a seasonality to your business that you need to be aware of and figure out, how am I going to make sure I've got enough cash during those lean times? Okay. Sometimes it's the times when you feel like you have the most business where the cash is the thinnest, because you're doing a lot of work, you're making money on the books, but you haven't actually gotten the payments yet. And so you've had a lot of outlays. That may be where a line of credit is really useful if you don't have a pot of cash to draw into, or a savings account. Where are those break-evens and ratios? The ratios are really useful because they're going to help us understand how we are doing compared to our market, our industry. And we looked at the RMAs. We gave you sources for how you can find the RMA that you can say, am I going to be making enough money with the model that I'm considering to really be competitive in this market? If you're not, the world is going to tell you this. It may just take a while, and then you're going to say, God, I wish I had known this beforehand. This model isn't working. Sometimes that's a good lesson to learn in person, and then we recover from it and we get smarter. Other times it's useful to learn what other people did and kind of go from there. Well, and then finally we talked about how to get these kinds of funds, how to manage. We want to be able to figure out how to do this using that cash flow to set up monthly budgets, and figure out also what your gross margin is, particularly if you're dealing with any sort of product-related business. You're going to live and die by your gross margin. And you want to be really clear about that when you're setting up your pricing strategies. These things are going to be really important for you to understand that when you start making that number small, your margin too small, you have to work that so much harder to make the income that you need overall. And so that's where the ratios become really important. And then finally, today we talked about how to do our bookkeeping and sources of credit and so on. And then you're going to meet with your banker if you're going to go for a loan. These days, maybe they're doing it by Zoom, but traditionally this is a face-to-face meeting. They want to know who you are. They're going to be entrusting you with some of the bank's money. And so all of your other skills that you learned in the rest of your career for interviewing and dealing with meetings and influencing other people are all going to be useful in that meeting as well. All right. So again, you've got the example of Anne's business to refer back to. And you can compare what you're doing to the example that, we've provided to say, how does this measure up? How, does my document look like it's, sort of like this example? Did I cover all of the bases? Remember that, the writing counts. You want to have when you're working on the narrative part of your plan, you want it to be persuasive, edited. Make sure you don't have spelling and grammar errors in there, because that is representing you. And sorry, millennials who think that everything looks just fine if it's in a text. Business people will use the way you write to reflect how effective you are in management. I'm not saying it's always fair. It just is. I used to really hammer my students about this in the undergraduate world. I was like, I'm going to grade you like I'm your English teacher, because in business, that matters. You know, if people can't parse your document, if they can't, if they really have to struggle to understand what you're saying because your sentence is not structured properly, then you know, that those sort of this isn't a good person for me to work with. Ideas start to mount up in that decision maker. So here you see, you know, just a summary of the Ann's nursery example. Anne has the skills for her business. She's got some good, you know, unique business offerings to make her, you know, an interesting and competitive business. She has very clear targets. She has a realistic but aggressive, you know, goal of how much money she thinks she's going to make. She knows when she thinks she should be breaking even, that she'll be profitable in her third year with a good return, that she's got the cash flow, that she can, you know, keep those bills being paid, and her projections are in line with other people who have similar businesses. All right, so those are the things we focused on today. So I do have one exercise for you, which is, remember on the very first day of class, we did this form. And so I'm going to ask you to do it again. You can go out and get the form from your, from the score, from the Slack page. If you want to just write it down from the slide, that would be fine too. And then I'm going to put you in breakout rooms for 5 minutes so that you can talk to a friend about sort of, you know, how you see yourself working on this. And then if you have the original one that you did, pull it out and see what's changed in the last few weeks since you've been doing this work and since you've learned some new stuff. Okay, so Charlie, if you could put us in some breakout rooms. Are you there? Oh, there you are. I think you know what? I think I sprung this on him because I forgot to mark breakout rooms on my form here. So I think I can do it. Oh, nope, he's got it. Silly me, as if Charlie ever abandons the post. All right, everybody back?
Mhm.
Great. Okay, so remember that there are, you know, some resources here on the Slack page, which I have up on the screen just to remind you. The article that I was talking about crowdfunding is here under the obtain financing piece. But all of those other tools are still here for you if you need copies of them. And the recordings for our original classes are under the general category here. So you can see Charlie's posted, you know, and within a couple of hours of the class, when it finishes doing its magical transformation thing that he does to it, Charlie will have today's workshop up here as well. Okay. Good. So how did you do with your scoring? Did you you find some other places that you still need to work on? Do you find some places where you've said, okay, I've made some progress?
Yes.
I spoke with one lady, Cynthia, or I
Mhm.
think I'm saying
Lydia.
Cynthia, and she's well on her way. She's been using the things that you've been talking about, and sort of we were just talking generally about how you price your product, and more importantly, how you price your labor.
Yeah.
Into that, plus all the other intangibles like insurance, etc. And I think based upon what Ms. Baker and I were talking about, I think she's getting a really good handle on it.
Terrific.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. It really helped me.
Good.
I'm in a better thinking mindset place than I was in January. I think we started.
Yeah.
January.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good.
Good. That's
That's what we aim
the
for.
objective.
Good. Anybody else?
Hmm.
I always like kind of closing the loop, kind of going back to where we started and seeing, what has changed over time.
Right.
So now what I want to do is just go around the room and ask you, one at a time, what are you going to do next of all the things we've been working on? What is your next step? And part of it is, again, that social commitment to say it out loud to the universe.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have more encouragement to do that. So Sonetia, since your mic is open, you get to go first.
Well, my next step is the financial part. Trying to find, I use Intuit, if you've heard of that one.
Well, Intuit owns QuickBooks, Quicken,
QuickBooks.
and TurboTax.
Yeah. So I think I like what the young lady had said, that Calendly. I like that part of having it linked. So I need to look into apps now and Google and see what's going to work for me in my business.
Okay.
But yeah, the financial part is next.
Great. Let's see. How about Fireflies? Imagine that's not really your name, but that's what it says on the screen.
Yes, yeah.
What are you going to work on next?
He's on.
Kathleen, I believe that's an automated
Is that-
note-taking app.
Okay. Never mind. Lowland, how about you? Well, it looks like we lost everybody else. All right. All right.
Yeah.
So we're done. We've checked off all of our items, and remember to keep to use SCORE, use the Small Business Administration resources. There's a lot of stuff. This is coming from your tax dollars and from people in the community who really want to see our community succeed by helping small businesses succeed. So, get in touch with us at SCORE if you haven't already gotten a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, we can help you with things like, if you have questions about how to set up a financial forecast or fill out an application. We have people with different industries to help you with things. If you haven't already done so, particularly for this class, I'm going to ask you to fill out the evaluation form on Slack and give us some feedback. This is our first time doing a class like this using a webinar for SCORE.
Okay.
So anything we can do to make it better is helpful to us.
Okay. And that's the readiness assessment, right?
No, this is the workshop survey, which is on Slack.
Yeah.
It
Write
looks
it
like
down.
this.
I will write it down. Now we'll
Go to class exercises 6. It's this blue form. This is
Okay.
a Google Doc, so you just fill it out online.
Now, if I have to go back to any of the notes in here, will it still be available for me to go back to as a resource?
Here in Slack?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I'm going to
Okay.
keep Slack up for a while, so you can. You're welcome to use it.
Yeah, and just to let you know, all of the recordings and slides are also saved in the SCORE Bucks County website resource library, so that you can go there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So go to Bucks County SCORE. And then on the top green bar, one thing says library, click on that. They're going to be in reverse order. So this one will be first.
Right.
And because the most recent one is on the top.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
All right. And they're up there for quite some time. So you can go back to it. And there's other things while you're there, peruse through and see some of the other webinars and things and check them out, because there's lots of other, great information from my various colleagues who have, areas of specialty that they've taken a little dive into.
Do they list any people that have launched their businesses through the SCORE?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
he
in fact, this month we have been celebrating Women's Month, and our SCORE newsletter highlighted what 6, 7 women who've started businesses through that we've been working with.
Okay, that's good
And
to
there's some
know.
articles about them. We often put an article in the Bucks Herald, like every other issue or so. There's we highlight a business that's succeeded with us, and there's other stories as well for Bucks County, but there's other the other chapters all do the same thing. So there's
Okay.
tons of success
Okay.
stories out there about people who've worked with us.
Okay, that's good to know. That's nice. All righty. Yep, that was good.
Great.
I have my notes.
Well, thank you for attending the class and for your time.
Thank you all. Thank you all. I'm more confident now.
We wish you great success.
Yes, thank you. I'll keep you informed.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.
I guess we're at the appointed hour, Kathleen. So thank you, everyone who signed in. And as Charlie and Kathleen both said, we have recorded all of the 6 sessions, this being the 6th, and you can find those on our site along with the slides. Thank you again, and hope to see you tomorrow for our next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.